back. Harvey is the VP of Product Management from Crawford Technologies. And today he is going to be talking about the necessity of reengineering as part of a workflow. Harvey, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda. I appreciate it. So, kind of a wordy title. Necessity of reengineering as part of a workflow. What does that mean, really? It really means that, this is all a question of business process optimization. And what we're going to talk about here for the next 30 minutes or so is really the work behind the workflow. Because command and control is great, but it's command and control of what? And that really is the question. So we'll do a little bit as far as background and what's going on within the industry and what problems are in the forefront of people's minds, and some real world examples of how the work behind the workflow really enables and establishes the return on investment for workflow itself and all the other things that are attached to it. If I can stop for 1 second, I find myself in a very familiar position at the last presentation of the day. I'm usually the guy that stands between you and cocktails, although in this virtual environment, you can take care of that yourself. Hopefully, you'll stick around and hear our closing. But let's get back to the presentation and let's talk about some of the challenges that you probably know of at least as well as I do. Too many solutions, multiple stakeholders, but those stakeholders don't have access to the information, or at least access to the information fast enough so that they can do something with it. And this is kind of a huge challenge. End to end, we don't know what's going on at every step of the process because there are a lot of steps in this process. We know there's bottlenecks in the workflow, but we can't see them because that visibility, that transparency isn't there. That kind of transparency that we talked about a couple of hours ago in a previous presentation. So let's take one step back and let's talk about workflow and what is it and why the heck should I care, right? I like to talk about it as business process automation and business process optimization. It's really, two sides of the same coin. And when we look at print, I shouldn't use the word print, I should use the word output. Output production workflow, right? We need to optimize that process. We need to automate the process, eliminate the bottlenecks, increase the transparency. And how do we do all those things? Again, what's workflow? It really is the relationship between the people running it, the process used to create the end product, which oftentimes is ink on a piece of paper in an envelope and out in the mail, but it is also an electronic transmission of some sort, whether that be email or an HTML page or an SMS message. But nonetheless, it's all part of the output production workflow. Again, as I said in the previous presentation, if you ask 100 people what workflow is, you'll probably get 110 answers. And we're trying to at least narrow that scope here for our own purposes. It is a plan of action because we need to go from point A to point B and do some stuff in between. It's a strategy and a bunch of tactics and how we're going to go about that plan of action and produce something. And it's about the management of the information that starts and is created during and is finished when that process is done. So here's my overall premise. It's not just command and control, it's execution and it's work done throughout that process. It's all about integration and it's about various steps and modules within an overall process. So we need to do several things to make sure it's a successful workflow. And this is not necessarily in the order of execution, but it certainly is all about integration. It's creating files for other systems that integrate with the whole. How do we sort and split files and combine files to save for postage, that stuff that's going out in the mail? It truly is all about normalizing and standardizing, and we'll see how that feeds the workflow at the beginning of the execution in just a moment. We need to add controls and barcodes which act as controls so that we can ensure the integrity of the process as it goes through its various steps and it is completed. Several other things we need to do at the same time, particularly when we're talking about transaction, print, and mail. So let's look at a couple of what I think are real case scenarios, although I don't have a specific name there. Our little man represents the frustration that someone running a print shop or an output processing shop can see, where I get files in different PDLs. They're AFP and Xerox and PostScript and PCL, but my printer or printers runs best with one PDL. And it's very important that I run that printer at optimal speed, because a slow printer costs me money. So what we do in document reengineering, and why it is an integral part of the workflow, is we can standardize or normalize what we're working on. So imagine how much simpler it would be to operate on files that are exactly the same as far as the printer definition language is concerned. So I can eliminate all the variability of the different file formats by standardizing on one file type that goes through my workflow. This is just an example. It doesn't have to be PDF. We could standardize on AFP or Xerox or whatever is best for the majority of the print equipment that already exists in the shop. So let's further leverage the money spent on that print equipment so that we can increase the ROI on the money we've already spent. So let's talk about that a little bit more, that consolidation. I mean, spending high 6 to 7 figures on an inkjet press, certainly within the realm of possibility, and certainly increases the efficiency and the throughput of the overall shop. But you can't do it with a bunch of little jobs. It's got to run all the time. The printer can't stop, because whenever the printer stops, somebody else's cash register rings, not yours. So how do I resolve that issue? With document reengineering and consolidation of jobs. So I can take a bunch of little jobs and combine them into one big job and put banner pages in the middle to separate those particular jobs. And this is a very rudimentary example, but the key is we keep the printer running. And that's extremely important for the health and welfare of the printer, but also the health and welfare of the business. So here's a situation, a challenge, an issue that just about everybody who puts ink on paper for putting them in an envelope runs into. How do I ensure the integrity of the mail piece? How do I ensure the integrity of the document so that everything that is supposed to go in the envelope actually does go in the envelope, and anything that isn't supposed to go in the envelope doesn't go there? Without using a high integrity, modern technical solution of matching the piece of paper to the envelope as they both go through the inserter, can lead to very expensive issues, security problems, regulatory non-compliance, fines. It's just a horrible thing. So how do we do that? All of our customers, all the end users and customers want assurance that everything they send is printed and mailed to the right address. They want proof that only what was supposed to be inserted in an envelope was actually inserted, because double stuffs really are only good in cookies. They're not good in envelopes. So what we do is we add intelligent barcodes after we get the PDL from composition. So we're not going back upstream. We don't recreate the composition. We don't reprogram the way the way the image is laid on the piece of paper. We add a barcode onto each one of those pieces of paper and create a data file at that same time. We send the data file to the inserter, and we reconcile the barcode that's on each piece of paper as it is recognized by the inserter, thereby ensuring that only what went into the envelope is supposed to go into the envelope. It did go in the envelope. So there's a variety of different ways to do this as far as hardware and specific software, but suffice it to say that if we create a mail-run data file, we put the image of that file in a barcode on the envelope, and we check it as it goes into the inserter and comes out of the inserter, either through cameras or internal controls within the inserter equipment. We have resolved the issue and ensured compliance, kept our customers happy, and kept the consumer happy, eliminated lawsuits and all kinds of other horrible things. So, that resolves that issue. But there are other things that we can do and should do within a document re-engineering process that is run under the auspices, if you will, of the workflow software. We've talked about in the industry about the white paper factory for a long time. Let's eliminate the warehouse full of envelopes and pre-printed shells and all that stuff. And it sounds like nirvana, excuse me. But there's some things that have to be done, particularly in the area of address blocks, because whoever designed the document decided they'd put the address over here, over there, over here, because it looked nice. But they didn't consider the fact that there's no standardization. As per this example, where the print file's got address blocks down there, but the standardization that I want to do on a window envelope has got the address block up here. So what do? Well, we move it. With a document engineering process run as part of the overall workflow, we can do that seamlessly and eliminate the concern about not having the address in the window. So that eliminates all but one inventory item for one window envelope. So about this white paper factory, excuse me, we also talk about color. Originally, pre-printed forms had the graphs and the logos and the forms on it. Sometimes they were in color. And we had to buy a bunch of pre-print forms and stock those in the warehouse and maintain the inventory and store the paper, excuse me, exert inventory control and have reorder points and worry about suppliers, all that stuff involved with maintaining a varied inventory of many hundreds, if not thousands, of stock keeping units or SKUs. If we can reduce that to one or a couple by taking the pre-printed form and printing it at the same time as we do the data through the use of a color printer and some forms design, then we've resolved, I guess be the word, eliminated any problem we would have with inventory. All we've got to inventory is plain white paper in a variety of thicknesses and formats. So we can go from what's on the left to what's on the right in one step through a document re-engineering process, eliminate the pre-printed form and all that it costs, and print at a higher speed because we're using an inkjet printer that runs real fast and is probably roll-fed. So another part of the overall workflow and the document re-engineering is a method of choice. Print mail used to be the only way we delivered this kind of transaction information to the end user consumer. But people want it differently now. They want to get their documents by mail, email, certainly by print mail. It's still the bulk of the way information is received, but others want it by email, by text messages, logging onto a website, and they want to use the device of choice. Could be a desktop computer, a laptop computer, a tablet, a smartphone, There aren't any dumb phones left anymore, and you can't get it on a dumb phone anyway. But what's a printer to do when confronted with this ever-growing and ever more important issue? We talk about channels, a multi-channel, an omni-channel, and there's a print channel, and an online channel, and a mobile channel, all about channels, right? But what it's all about is replacing the ink on paper with digital documents. So what's a digital document? I mean, you know, it could be something in an email, but really, you know, that's another one of those things. You ask 100 people, you're going to get 110 answers. But primarily, we talk about that kind of information that instead of being delivered by ink on paper, it's delivered by bits and bytes in an electronic screen, in an electronic stream. So there's a right way to do this, and there's a not so good way to do this. And if we're delivering particularly to a handheld device, whether it be a smartphone or a tablet, we need to make sure that the way we deliver it is consistent with the display capabilities of the device that we're sending it to. So I'm sure everybody is at one point gotten a PDF document on a cell phone, couldn't read it, and you did kind of the pinch and squint, and what is it? Non-satisfactory experience. There is a method of sending information to a handheld device that is responsive to the device. So that's one channel that needs to be considered. But it's all about, through the workflow, and this work behind the workflow is taking the file that's been created already, not reprogramming it, not sending it back to composition, but to process it in a way that is consistent with the distribution method. Certainly, we can print it on paper. There is a way to optimize the file for email. We can turn it into a web page so that it can be accessed through a portal. We can send a notice through an SMS text message that it's available for access. There's a variety of methods to do this, get the response the way we want it, and all without going upstream to reprogram. All part of the overall end-to-end workflow that is transparent, it's command and control, and execution. So there's also accessibility, and that needs to be considered because that's also a method of sending the information, physical or digital, and all can be part of the overall workflow process in which the format that's targeted for an individual customer is not known within document composition, nor does it have to be. So we compose the document the same way we always did, create the output the same way we always did, but within this output management workflow, or if you'll excuse the phrase mass customization, we create the format that the customer wants. So end-to-end production, command, control, and I re-emphasize execution through workflow processing, and this is just a small number of things that end-to-end production, command, and control does. There's any number of them that need to be considered like this. Multiple demands from not only just the specific customer, but it's really what the market is demanding. And I don't expect you to read all of this. It's kind of an eye chart, but recognize that all of this can be handled, managed, controlled, modified, and made transparent through an end-to-end workflow process for output management. What's our goal here? Our goal is, reducing reprint costs, apology letters, reducing delays, eliminating delays, eliminating regulatory fines, and most perhaps in today's world, most important, increasing customer satisfaction. It's all about customer experience. Any analyst worth his weight First thing he talks about these days is customer experience. That's on the tip of everybody's tongue. We believe that delivering the right information at the right time in the right format goes a long way to maintaining and increasing customer experience. So, to step back just a minute, I mean, we take a look at this whole concept of business process optimization as relates to output production workflow. We can solve any number of challenges with portals and dashboards, allowing all the stakeholders complete visibility to the overall process. Automate the workflow to eliminate manual steps, connect systems that are heretofore disconnected, increase the productivity of both our capital assets and our human resources, ensure that we have mailpiece level compliance so as to reduce fines, eliminate compliance errors, and increase customer satisfaction, all at the time of ensuring auditability and reporting on that process. And again, optimize the entire business process by configuring things correctly, integrating disparate machines and process types into one overall optimized production flow, get a better return on the investment we've already made in the infrastructure and the architecture, along with ensuring the appropriate technical support services. So it is end-to-end production, command and control, and quite frankly, execution. All of these things, all of these separate and sometimes at this point disconnected modules of the overall workflow can be integrated and orchestrated under the umbrella of the ProConductor workflow. Multiple challenges, I think we saw this. And it is the work behind the workflow. It's a workflow integration platform, enterprise level document re-engineering solutions that we talked about for the last 20 minutes as to how to improve, automate, orchestrate, and consolidate our workflow. Through, through Crawford Tech, a net promoter score of plus 70. And this slide's a little out of date. It's 25 years delivering award-winning products and services with our professional service organization that is really second to none, and a strong, experienced support team as evidenced by our net promoter score. So I know we're early because we started a little early, but
we are a little early, but we do have some questions. And to the participants, please go ahead if you have any questions for Harvey. Just go ahead and type them into the chat box, and I will go ahead and share them with him. Okay, so. First, my company has 3 print centers. Does the workflow accommodate that, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, the workflow does accommodate that. The workflow manager solution certainly accommodates multiple locations. And we can do that in several different ways. Well, a couple of different ways. One is there is central location where let's call it the management solution, the management location where all information that is to be distributed comes into there, or are they, so how it's connected is, through the internet or through a private network. How is it managed is, it depends upon the either centralized or decentralized management methodology the company wants to take on. We would support both. And remember that one of the #1 tenets of this solution is complete transparency and visibility. So a person in location A can manage the workflow in location B, or vice versa. So it can be managed centrally, it can be distributed, managed, but the main thing to remember is that I can take an individual print job and move it from one location to the next, whether that location be a different printer in the same building or a different printer halfway across the continent. Certain safety valves, if you will, can be set up so that it would eliminate somebody from moving a print job to a printer that wasn't capable of running it, or to a location that didn't have the right finishing equipment as demanded by the individual job. So the short answer to your question is yes, we can do that. The more detailed answer is it's a very detailed process and operation, and has to be structured appropriately so that just because you moved a job there doesn't mean it's necessarily going to get done, but we can ensure through production controls that it is appropriate. That's probably more than you wanted to know, but hopefully this wasn't you asked me what time it was and I told you how to build a clock.
No, not at all. Not at all. Can you talk a little bit more about how you ensure mail piece integrity, how you make sure that every sheet gets into the right envelope?
Well, as I indicated before, we'll put a barcode on every piece of paper, and a barcode that has some intelligence to it. It's, it's this job, it's this document, it's page 1 of a 6-page document, and flowing through page 2 of that document, page 3, and such. And each one of those is read by the inserter. So if I don't have page 4 following page 3, if I go to page 5 directly from page 3, where the heck is page 4? Was that a jam? Did it get stuck to the previous page? So that's one example. I can see where, hey, there's a page missing. So we're going to stop the inserter and we're going to find that page. Right? And if we are inserting and we get to page 6 of a 6-page document, and we then read a barcode that says it's page 1 of a 2-page document, and we go to insert it in the same envelope, the machine knows. The machine stops, we prevent the double stop. So there are a couple of different methods based upon what kind of equipment is being used, but that's the basic methodology. Is we actually read with the inserter and with camera devices exactly what's going into the envelope in real time, and that prevents the double stuffs and the missed sheets, and ensures mail piece integrity.
Okay. Another one that came in. Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy of buy versus build in with this type of solution?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are many organizations because, for the want of commercially available software, have built their own solutions. And that's certainly, at some point that was viable. I think at some point that made sense. I don't think it's a viable solution anymore today, because maintaining compliance with operating systems, with other hardware and software that needs to be integrated to make a whole is a huge task. And if you're in the printing business or you're in the distribution business, why do you really want to be in the software business if there's something that you can purchase that is maintained, guaranteed, supported, and dedicated to maintaining the appropriate technology? I just don't see where that is fiscally responsible. Certainly you could have a team of people that are over there maintaining software, but can you really maintain all of the software and all of the integration capabilities and all of the things that are happening in print hardware, finishing hardware, computer hardware? It's just a task that is probably beyond. I don't want to insult anybody, but to do it the right way, it's beyond the capability of people that are running printers. Not that there's, it's just a science unto itself.
Okay, makes sense. I've got a couple more. Does the redesign of the piece with different fonts, colors, etc., require a programmer?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, it requires someone who is very familiar with the data, understands the documents, understands how documents are being used, and has a certain basic knowledge. To be a real coder and programmer, no, you don't have to be. We have software solutions that are drag and drop, and what you see is what you get. It needs to be a person who understands documents. And
so Harvey, this is Kevin. I could probably expand on that a little bit when you start talking about fonts.
Kevin.
So when you're talking about fonts in a particular document, if you're talking about a normal printing Xerox AFP type of document, those really use type 3 bitmap fonts. And we, in our transformation process, we'll go all the way straight through to convert those into a type 3 bitmap font in the output PDL. So if we go to a PDF, we can also render that type 3 inside the PDF as well as normal. Now there's options to take those type 3s and get them into a type 1 or a true type font by doing some font mapping. There's options to do that. And it's all done within the graphical user interface we call Pro Designer. So you can see as you're font mapping to the either a true type or a type 1 font or the Adobe Base 14 fonts, right? You'll see the rendered output right there on the screen. So you can go the other way too, is when you start to look at an incoming PDF that you want to maybe transform to an AFP file, we'll actually take the true type font, type 1 font, and we'll transform that into a type 3 font using the same code page or characteristics of the incoming font. So we'll just make a new code page or a some kind of anti-carriage the characters so they come out correctly in the outgoing PDL. So there's different ways to manage fonts both on the input and the outbound side of the process, all done with the user interface. Go ahead, Herbie, sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And we have a couple of more here. From a West European viewpoint, is this solution GDPR compliant?
I'm not sure of how that relates, quite frankly. Certainly there is some storage involved in doing this end-to-end, but anything that is any regulation, any process that GDPR requires is already there. So, I mean, the short answer to the question is yes, it's GDPR compliant. I'd have to know the specific issues that the questioner had in mind to be more descriptive.
Yeah, so Harvey, if you're talking about, depending on what compliance you're looking at is true, but you can turn on this type of encryption you'd want in a database if you want. So there's a lot more than just, you're right. So, but we can.
Yeah, there's a lot more than just storage. So, I mean, there's encryption of data in transit and encryption of data at rest.
So we do have the ability and to place a compressed encrypted file into an archive solution and then pull that document out at retrieval time and decrypt it and present that to the end user. So we do have that capability built into our portfolio in the ECM side.
Well, yeah, and also we can talk about files, print files in transit, whether it's within a specific network or something that is coming from the outside. Everything will be encrypted, transmitted encrypted, and the file will be stored as encrypted, and will only be decrypted when it goes to the printer. So, you know, without knowledge of the specific instance that the person is asking about, it's hard for either Kevin or I to be any more descriptive, but there are a variety of different methods that we use within the solution to ensure compliance, to ensure encryption, to ensure that nothing is stored out in the open without an encryption layer.
Okay. So I have another one that's come in. So when re-engineering documents and converting data streams, do you have the capability to preserve and manage color, set rendering, intents, etc., to ensure that the output print is as expected?
So we can preserve the original color of the document coming in and pass that on through. So we can also change the RDP color if you want to come out to CMYK, and you can do that mapping within our software as well. So either option is available.
Okay.
Short answer is yes.
Yeah. I think that was that answer.
Yeah.
All right. One other question. How does this system support multi-channel or omni-channel communications?
It supports multi-channel communication by taking the incoming document and doing document re-engineering techniques to reformat the output. So the incoming output is ink on paper. We will use those document re-engineering techniques as described earlier to separate that one stream into multiple streams based upon the required format for distribution. Does that make sense? And we do that by running the input stream, if you will, against a database where preferences are stored that indicate what method the recipient would like to receive the information on.
Okay. I think that that answers that. And I don't see any other questions. Is there anything else that you guys want to add that you may have missed?
Well, I don't think so, unless Kevin has some things that he wants to talk about.
No, it's up. Unless anybody has any specific questions about any of the software, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Anybody's on the call.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Harvey and Kevin, for that session. That was great. Folks, we are done a little bit early. Oh, wait. Oops. Hold
We got
on.
a question?
We have a question. Excellent. Thank you. Do you use a proprietary authentication method?
No, it's not proprietary, but you know, it's certainly you know, industry standards.
Okay.
You know, there's really nothing in this that is proprietary. We run, and you know, as a brings up another point that we run on a variety of different platforms, both Windows and Linux and Unix, and a variety of different platforms. So components of our solution are completely platform agnostic. So again, it's part of the philosophy of allowing our customer to further leverage the existing equipment and infrastructure within their shop and get a better return on an investment that's already been
Excellent. Okay. I think that is it. Again, thank you for this session.